He looked me dead in the eye and said I'd never be good enough for his family. Until 3 years later, there I was, walking down the aisle in a designer wedding dress. And guess who was stuck in the front row, watching his own brother marry the woman he once tossed aside? Yeah, me. If anyone's ever told you you're not enough, you need to hear this. What happens next? You won't believe it. Stick around, because the ending flips everything. And if you've ever been underestimated, smash that like button right now. My name is Naomi, and 3 years ago, I was just another college student trying to make ends meet. I worked at this little coffee shop downtown city, and honestly, some days I wondered if my own dreams would ever come true. I was 28, studying business at night, and spending my days steaming milk and taking orders from people who seemed to have their whole lives figured out. That Tuesday morning started like any other. The autumn air was crisp, and I was wiping down tables when he walked in. I noticed him immediately, not because he was devastatingly handsome, though he was, but because of the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant. He wore a simple black coat and jeans, nothing flashy, but there was something about him that made the whole room feel different. He ordered a simple black coffee, no sugar, no cream. When I handed it to him, our fingers brushed for just a second, and I swear I felt electricity. He looked at me with those intense brown eyes and said, "Thank you, Naomi," reading my name tag. The way he said it made my heart skip a beat. Most customers barely looked at me, but he saw me, really saw me. Long day ahead, I asked, trying to make conversation. He smiled, and it was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Something like that. What about you? Big dreams beyond this coffee shop? The question caught me off guard. Most people assumed this was all I was capable of, but he seemed genuinely curious about my answer. Business school at night. I told him, I want to start my own company someday. Instead of the polite nod I usually got, his eyes lit up with genuine interest. What kind of business? We talked for 10 minutes about my ideas, my dreams, my plans. He listened as if every word mattered, asking thoughtful questions that showed he understood business in a way that impressed me. From that day forward, Ethan became a regular. Every morning at 8:15, he'd walk through those doors, order his black coffee, and we'd talk about books, dreams, and life. I found myself looking forward to those conversations more than anything else in my day. He had this way of making me feel like the most interesting person in the world. After 2 weeks of these morning chats, he finally asked me out, not in some grand gesture, just a simple, "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night?" My heart practically leapt out of my chest. I said yes before I could overthink it. That first date was magical. He picked me up in a modest car, nothing fancy, and took me to this cozy Italian restaurant. He brought me a single white rose, and when I asked why just one, he said, "Because you're one of a kind." We talked for hours about everything and nothing. When he walked me to my door, he kissed me softly under the streetlight, and I knew my life had just changed forever. The next few weeks felt like a fairy tale. Ethan would surprise me with little things, coffee and a pastry when I worked early shifts, a book he thought I'd enjoy, flowers every Friday. Always different ones, always with a sweet note. We'd go on simple dates, nothing expensive, just walks in the park, movies, and picnics by the lake. He'd hold my hand and tell me about his dreams, and I'd share mine. We'd laugh until our stomachs hurt and talk until the sun came up. 2 months into our relationship, everything changed in the span of a single afternoon. I was at the library studying when my friend Nina showed me something on her phone. "Isn't this your boyfriend?" she asked, and my blood ran cold. There on her screen was a business article titled, "Reed Industries CEO Ethan Reed Announces Major Expansion." The photo showed my Ethan in a tailored suit, standing in front of a corporate building I'd driven past 100 times. Ethan Reed, not just Ethan, the sweet guy who brought me coffee and talked about dreams, but Ethan Reed, billionaire CEO, one of the youngest and most successful businessmen in the country. I felt sick to my stomach. Everything we'd shared, every conversation, every kiss, had been built on a lie. When he picked me up that night, I confronted him with the article printed in my shaking hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked genuinely pained, running his hands through his hair the way he did when he was stressed. "Because I wanted you to know me, not my bank account," he said. "Do you have any idea how many people have pretended to love me just for my money? When I met you, you saw Ethan, just Ethan, not the CEO, not the fortune, just me." I wanted to be angry, but the vulnerability in his voice melted my heart. He explained how lonely his world was, how every relationship had been transactional, how refreshing it was to be loved for who he was inside. We talked until dawn, and by morning, I understood, if anything, it made me love him more. He'd chosen to be ordinary with me when he could have impressed me with wealth. That meant something. 3 weeks later, Ethan said the words I'd been hoping to hear. "I want you to meet my family." But the moment we pulled up to the Reed mansion, my confidence crumbled. The house was more like a palace, with perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway that seemed to go on forever. Ethan squeezed my hand as we walked to the front door. "Remember," he whispered, "I love you exactly as you are." His mother, Evelyn, greeted us with a smile that never reached her eyes. She was elegant in that way money buys, but there was ice beneath her polite words. "So you're the coffee shop girl Ethan's been telling us about," she said, and somehow she made my job sound like a character flaw. His father, Charles, was worse. He looked at me like I was something unpleasant he'd found on his shoe. Dinner was a nightmare. They asked about my family, my background, my prospects. Every answer I gave seemed to disappoint them further. When I mentioned my night classes, Evelyn said, "How ambitious," in a tone that made ambition sound like a disease. They talked about their social circle, their charity galas, their country club, all while making it crystal clear that I didn't belong in any of those places. The only bright spot was Ethan's younger brother, Liam. He was 30, kind-hearted, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. While his parents grilled me about my unsuitable background, Liam asked about my business ideas and listened with real enthusiasm. "She's brilliant, Ethan," he said at one point. "You're lucky to have found someone so genuine." If only I'd known then how prophetic those words would be. After dinner, I escaped to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. When I came out, Charles Reed was waiting for me in the hallway, like a predator who'd cornered his prey. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice calm but menacing, "I think we need to have a conversation." He led me to his study, a room that reeked of old money and older prejudices. Without preamble, he opened his checkbook. "Name your price," he said simply. "What will it take for you to disappear from my son's life?" I stared at him in shock. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Reed," I managed to say. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Everyone has a price, dear. The question is whether you're smart enough to take it now or foolish enough to make this harder on yourself." When I shook my head, his mask slipped completely. "Let me be clear," he said, stepping closer. "You will never be enough for this family. You don't have the breeding, the background, or the class. You're a pretty distraction, nothing more. Ethan will tire of you eventually, and when he does, you'll be left with nothing but memories of a world you were never meant to inhabit." His words hit me like physical blows. Every insecurity I'd ever felt about our relationship came rushing back. "You don't belong in our world," he continued, his voice cold as winter. "You never will. Save yourself the embarrassment and leave now while you still have some dignity intact." I was crying by then, but I held my head high. "Ethan loves me," I whispered. "That has to count for something." Charles Reed smiled then, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen. "Love, my dear girl? Love doesn't pay for galas or fund political campaigns. Love doesn't secure business deals or maintain social standing. Ethan may think he loves you now, but when push comes to shove, he'll choose family. He always does." As if summoned by his father's prophecy, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He'd heard everything. I could see it in his face. This was his moment to choose, to stand up for our love, to prove his father wrong. Instead, he looked at me with something that might have been pity and said the words that shattered my heart into a million pieces. "Maybe he's right, Naomi. Maybe we are from different worlds." His voice was quiet, defeated. Maybe I was being selfish, pulling you into a life that would never really accept you. I love you, but sometimes love isn't enough. I felt like I was drowning. The man I'd given my heart to, the man who promised to love me exactly as I was, had just chosen his family's approval over our future. I didn't scream or beg. I simply gathered what was left of my dignity and walked out of that mansion, out of his life, and out of the city that held too many painful memories. As I drove away, I could see Ethan standing in the doorway, but he didn't chase after me. He just watched me leave. And in that moment, I knew Charles Reed had been right about one thing. When it mattered most, Ethan had chosen family. But what he didn't know was that losing me would be the biggest mistake of his life. 3 years, that's how long it took me to rebuild myself from the ashes of that devastating night. I moved across the country to California, where nobody knew my story or my shame. For the first few months, I barely functioned. I'd wake up expecting to see Ethan's text messages, only to remember that chapter of my life was over. Some nights I'd cry myself to sleep, hearing Charles Reed's voice telling me I'd never be enough. But pain has a funny way of becoming fuel when you're tired of being burned by it. I threw myself into building the life I'd always dreamed of. I finished my business degree and launched an online consulting company, helping small businesses grow their digital presence. What started as a way to distract myself from heartbreak became my passion, and eventually my fortune. By year 2, I was making 6 figures. By year 3, I was making 7. I'd been featured in business magazines, spoken at conferences, and built a team of incredible people who believed in my vision. More importantly, I'd learned to believe in myself again. I'd proven that Charles Reed was wrong. I was enough. I'd always been enough. The scared coffee shop girl who'd walked out of that mansion was gone. In her place stood a confident, successful woman who knew her worth and wouldn't let anyone diminish it ever again. I dated other men, good men who respected and cherished me, but I learned to be complete on my own first. I bought my own flowers every Friday, just like Ethan used to. But these weren't gifts from someone else. They were celebrations of how far I'd come. That's when the invitation arrived. Cream-colored paper, elegant script, and a name that made my heart skip, Liam Reed. Nina, my college friend who'd become my business partner, was getting married to Liam Reed. I'd known she was dating someone from a wealthy family, but she'd never mentioned the name. When she called to explain, her voice was apologetic and worried. "I know this is complicated," she said, "but Liam isn't like his family. He's nothing like Ethan. He's kind and genuine, and he really wants you at our wedding. He talks about you sometimes, about how brilliant and strong you are. But if it's too painful, I understand." Part of me wanted to decline to avoid the potential drama and painful memories, but the stronger part of me, the part that had built an empire from nothing, wanted to face my past on my own terms. I RSVP'd yes. If I was going back to that world, I was going back as the successful woman I'd become, not the broken girl who'd fled in tears. I bought a dress that cost more than I used to make in a month, booked an appointment with the best stylist in Los Angeles, and prepared to show the Reed family exactly who they'd underestimated. The wedding was at the same Reed mansion where I'd been humiliated 3 years earlier. As my car pulled up that circular driveway, I felt a moment of panic. But then I looked at myself in the mirror, saw the successful woman staring back, and smiled. I wasn't the same person who'd left this place broken. I was stronger, wealthier, and more confident than I'd ever been. The ceremony was beautiful. Liam looked genuinely happy, and Nina was radiant. But I couldn't help noticing Ethan in the front row, and when our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't expected: regret, deep, painful regret. He looked older, more tired, like the weight of his choices had aged him. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. After the ceremony, at the reception, Liam found me. "Naomi," he said, his voice warm with genuine affection, "I'm so glad you came. Nina wasn't sure you would." We talked about my business, my success, my new life. Unlike his parents, who pointedly ignored me, Liam was genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished. "You know," he said as we danced, "Ethan made the biggest mistake of his life when he let you go." I always thought so. That's when everything changed, because Liam looked into my eyes and said the words that would rewrite both our futures. I've been in love with you since the night I met you 3 years ago." I stared at Liam in shock. Here we were at his brother's best friend's wedding reception, and he was confessing his love for me. "Liam," I whispered, "what are you saying?" He took my hands gently, his eyes serious and full of emotion I'd never noticed before. "I'm saying that I watched my brother make the worst decision of his life when he chose our parents' approval over you. I'm saying that every day for 3 years, I've thought about the brilliant, beautiful woman who walked out of our lives because we weren't worthy of her. I'm saying that I've followed your success from afar, been proud of every milestone, every achievement, every moment you proved our father wrong about who you are." My heart was racing. This wasn't how I'd imagined this day going. "I watched Ethan destroy the best thing that ever happened to him," Liam continued, "and I promised myself that if I ever got a second chance with you, I wouldn't make the same mistake. I love you, Naomi, not the memory of you, not the idea of you, but the incredible woman you've become. And if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that some Reed men do know how to choose love over everything else." Before I could even process what was happening, Liam was down on one knee, right there on the dance floor, pulling out a ring that caught the light like captured starlight. "Naomi Carter," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned, silent reception, "will you marry me?" I looked around the room and saw Ethan's face, pale with shock and something that looked like devastation. I saw Charles and Evelyn Reed, their mouths agape with horror. I saw Nina beaming with joy and surprise. But most importantly, I saw Liam, the man who'd seen my worth when his own family couldn't, offering me everything his brother had been too weak to fight for. "Yes," I said, and the word came out stronger and more certain than I'd expected. "Yes, Liam Reed, I'll marry you." 6 months later, I stood at the back of the same Reed mansion, but this time, I was the bride. My dress was custom-made, more beautiful than anything I'd ever imagined wearing. My business was thriving. I had prenups protecting my independence, and I was about to marry a man who'd loved me at my lowest and celebrated me at my highest. As I walked down the aisle past the same people who'd once deemed me unworthy, I felt the sweet taste of justice. Charles Reed was forced to walk me down the aisle since my father had passed years before, and Evelyn Reed had to smile and welcome me as her daughter-in-law. The irony was perfect and complete. But the most satisfying moment was seeing Ethan in the front row, watching the woman he'd lost marry his brother. His face was a mask of regret and pain, and for a brief moment, I felt sorry for him. He'd had everything I was about to have, and he'd thrown it away for his parents' approval. Now he had to sit there and watch his brother claim the life he'd been too cowardly to fight for. As Liam and I exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other despite what anyone else thought, I realized something beautiful. This wasn't just about proving the Reed family wrong or getting revenge on Ethan. This was about finding someone who saw my worth from the beginning and had the courage to claim it. Liam had waited 3 years for his chance, and when it came, he didn't hesitate. When we kissed as husband and wife, sealing our union in the very place where I'd once been told I'd never belong, I felt a completeness I'd never experienced before, not because I'd won or gotten revenge, but because I'd found someone who loved all of me unconditionally and fearlessly. Sometimes, the people who reject you are actually redirecting you to something better. Ethan's rejection led me to Liam, who loved me the way I deserved to be loved from the very beginning. Charles Reed's cruel words pushed me to build an empire that proved my worth wasn't determined by his approval. Their no became the universe's way of preparing me for a much bigger yes. If this story inspired you, smash that like button, subscribe for more incredible true stories, and comment below about a time someone's rejection led to your biggest blessing. Just remember, your worth isn't defined by who accepts you, but by how you choose to accept yourself. Your comeback is already being written, and trust me, it's going to be more beautiful than you ever imagined.